Welcome to Techwire in Studio, a conversation about technology, government, and California's digital landscape. I'm Christina Gagnier, and today I'm joined by Mike Montgomery, the Executive Director of CALinnovates. Mike, thank you for joining me.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So many people in our audience might not know what CALinnovates is, so can you tell us about the organization?
Sure. So CALinnovates is a San Francisco-based coalition with a large tech membership focused on bridging California tech to Washington politics.
Great. And so for the average citizen, what does that mean? What are some of the issues that you guys are trying to face in Congress and here in the state legislature that impact their daily lives?
The biggest issue on the table right now is spectrum, wireless spectrum, which is wireless broadband that fuels our mobile devices like your iPads and your iPhones and your Androids and everything in between. So spectrum is a really big deal. There's not enough of it available for consumer use, and Washington can figure out how to do more to provide that for consumers. And then there's this issue taking place in Dubai right now, which most people would think, well, what's Dubai have to do with Sacramento or Washington? And it's an international conference that's looking to put a United Nations treaty into place that would regulate the internet and potentially tax the internet. Those are two really big issues that we're focused on right now.
And there's been headlines in a variety of papers, both things like USA Today and a lot of online publications talking about this regulation of the internet. What does that mean?
It means two things. And the first issue is censorship. There are some nations like China, Russia, and Iran that are looking to censor the information that their citizens are sending out via the internet. So the idea that an Arab Spring could occur would be wiped off the table because the governments would be reviewing everything that's sent out. So all packets of information would be censored. And the second thing is taxation. So all these startups that have, or more mature companies that have, freemium sorts of models that are used internationally would be taxed. So along something called a sender party pays setup, which nobody can really figure out who the sending party might be, whether it's the company that provides the infrastructure or the person who hits click. But the idea is that people would be, or companies would be paying some sort of tax that would then be used to build infrastructure in these developing countries. And so censorship and taxation are really big issues. Very, very big for US-based companies and any company that's focused on growing abroad.
I know the US has publicly come out and said that they're not going to sign on to the treaty. Why is this good for the average consumer?
Well, it's good for the average consumer because you're looking at, everything's gone to the internet. Everything's mobile now. And the idea that we are computer-based is not necessarily true. The idea that we carry a little computer in our pocket that has a phone app on it is probably more true than the fact that we carry phones these days. And so, whether you're using your favorite app that's free, and let's say you travel. So Christine, let's say you traveled to Mexico, and you wanted to send somebody a Facebook message. That would be taxed under this United Nations process. Would you be paying for that? Would Facebook be paying for it? Either way, you don't want to pay for it because it's free, and Facebook doesn't have that built into their business model. So somebody's going to lose on that proposition. Not saying who, but somebody will lose, and it's not going to be a good outcome. And you don't want the Mexican government reviewing what you're sending to your friend via Facebook message. The internet was built as this free and open, free-flowing platform. To take that away would, serve to probably stifle speech, slow innovation, and everybody in the tech market who's trying to build something new and cool and different might be focused on doing something else in the future. Regulation of the internet, whether at home or abroad, is is definitely not good for consumers and not good for businesses.
Well, the regulation conversation has come up because of two types of a lack of infrastructure, and one is actually things like spectrum and broadband and the lack of that infrastructure. But also, we don't have a legal infrastructure in place to deal with technology. Many people in our audience are government officials, and they tackle this on a day-to-day basis, trying to figure out what they can and can't do. Why do we have this regulatory issue, and in fact, why do we have a need for a regulation overhaul?
Well, it's a great question, and with our elected officials and regulators are doing, I think, a great job in trying to navigate a path forward. But the reality is, and I've said this many times, we're in some cases applying 20th century laws to 21st century innovation and ideas. And it shouldn't be a cookie cutter mentality where we take the old and apply it to the new, or the yet to be created new. We need to have one set of rules. So the idea of kind of regulatory certainty is good for business. It's good for our innovation economy. The startup CEO who's making an app in their garage today needs to know what the future looks like so that they can account for that. It's difficult to regulate when you don't know what the future looks like. But we need to have just kind of more of a common sense sort of approach to encouraging innovation. One great example is in San Francisco. These rideshare companies like Sidecar and Lyft have been struggling with cease and desist letters from the California PUC. I don't think the right idea is to go out and kill these companies before they have a chance to sit down with the regulators and try to figure out a path forward. That's probably kind of a present day sort of example of how we just need to sit down and work with the tech community to try to figure out how to move forward. Because ultimately, all of these startups are creating jobs, they're creating new opportunities and new platforms that didn't exist before, and that's lifting everybody up. And that's also, when you look at California as a state and the tax base, might be dwindling and the budget is hurting, we need more of these companies doing more good, great, cool things, not trying to shut them down and make them, Napster 2.0.
So one issue that is often faced, and this is between Silicon Valley and Washington, and even Sacramento and Silicon Valley, is communication. And an organization like yours is really an information broker. You're trying to take the innovation community and map it to innovation in government. What are some ways that you think the public and private sector can collaborate around these issues that we've discussed today?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's good for groups like mine to reach out to members of Congress and the FCC and have some really honest and frank conversations about where we stand and what our innovators need. We might not get everything we want, but we might get some of what we need, and that's pretty much the most important thing. So outreach is really critical. CALinnovates has done a number of trips to Washington, D.C. to do fly-arounds and meetings with members of Congress. And those conversations have been very helpful. Same with the FCC, who's been they've been very receptive and open to the idea of talking with, California's, innovation, economy creators, your CEOs, your entrepreneurs. Listening is the first part. We don't want to have to be the group that comes in afterwards and says, this is bad policy, don't do this. What we want to do is get ahead of the curve and try to point out how we can kind of sidestep challenges to move everybody forward rather than kind of having to come in after the bell. So communication is definitely key with our regulators.
Well, aside from communication, also just support, and I think organizations like yours kind of give a different perspective, both of entrepreneurs, of consumers, and things that are happening in the larger space.
Right, and that's a great point because we're not just a group of startup CEOs. We actually have consumer members who just want their devices to work, and they want the freedom to try out new things and test different things. I guess you could call everybody here is a consumer. You're one, I'm one, and just getting here, in my taxi, I used the Waze app. At some point in time, who knows what's going to come from different apps like this, but ultimately we want them and we want them to work. And what I'm here to do is make sure that they have enough fuel to get across the finish line so that they can be available on a widespread basis.
So if our viewers want to find out more information about your organization, where can they find you online?
They can find us at CALinnovates.org and on Twitter at CALinnovates.
Great. Well, Mike, thank you for joining me today. I think we've touched on spectrum, on regulation and things that a lot of people might not know the daily impacts, but we've had a conversation that really illustrates that. And thank you to our audience for joining us today and participating once again in a conversation about technology, government, and California's digital landscape.